Hello out there. We are on the air. It is December 30th, 2021. I'm your host, Rick Rockwell, and we're going to call this now the Rockwell Report, or Stranger in a Strange Land. Depends on where I'm going and what I'm doing, right? Sometimes we're in strange places doing strange things, and sometimes we're just reporting on some of the basics. And this is going to be a report on some of the basics. So if you like the channel, go ahead, hit the like, hit the subscribe. I don't do these as frequently as I used to, just because the situation wasn't changing as frequently as it used to, or as it was in the beginning when we first started with the, let's call it the Coof Chronicles. I have to be very careful with what I'm saying. Go ahead, like, hit the subscribe button, and we will deliver you the odd report here and there, sort of declining or cataloging the decline and the collapse. A little news for you. I mean, this may be the best place to find me now, and who knows for how much longer. I was turfed, kicked off, yanked from Facebook for, I'm not sure, either my account was hacked or I was posting something I shouldn't have done, something to do with the Coof. We will call it Coof 19. And yeah, so I was yanked off Facebook. So I don't know. I'll continue to try using it, but Facebook is a very, well, I'd say it's representative of most of the modern tech companies that we're dealing with now. You can be on and active in, minutes. If they want to get a hold of you, they can do it. If they want to bill you, they can do it. They can disable, they can reach out and touch you quite easily. But if you have any sort of recourse or any issue or any complaint, good luck. Good luck actually getting to somebody. I recently had to go through that with PayPal as well. And let's just say it was an ordeal. It takes hours, it takes navigation, it takes patience, and maybe you can talk to an actual living person. And let's face it, that's when things, as much as we look at incompetence and the decline of competence over the years in people, much of how stuff actually gets accomplished is done talking with another person. So on with that, shout out to everybody that's a faithful and loyal supporter of the channel. And you know who you are. That wacko out in Chilliwack, Jixer, whoever else is still out there. Dwayne and Charlene, if you guys are out there, hey. Today's show is going to be about what to expect in 2022. Now, I like doing predictions. It's kind of fun. But rather than just doing straight up bold predictions, I thought, let's come at this with a bit of a different angle. Let's sort of look at what to expect in 2022. 2021, well, let's go back to 2020 when most of the madness of the current era began with the Coof. I remember I remember at the time, a lot of people saying, oh, 2020 really sucks. Can't wait till this year is over. Well, it ended and we got 2021. Was 2021 much better? Not really. Not really. It was worse because what we're looking at is an overall trajectory. Things are going in one certain direction, right? So with that in mind, it is very tough to do actual straight up predictions. So I will try to do kind of soft predictions on what to expect in 2022. This is not an endorsement for McDonald's, but I will say their coffee is serviceable. It's actually decent coffee. Okay, so the first subject, and this is the one that has been probably front and center for most people for the last 2 years, right? It is the cough, the Coof, the virus, the health crisis, right? It's all that stuff. What should we expect? Well, first of all, I will draw your attention to what we've already received. Okay, so I'm going to cue it up, and this will be a short video from one of our provincial leaders here in BC. Her name is Bonnie Henry, and I want you to take stock of her changing position. And following that, we will take a look at Justin Trudeau, who has basically done the same sort of thing, came out with one position very strong and shifted very gradually. And so what people are doing when they do that, I'm stating something fairly obvious, but people will say things to get you on board, to minimize the psychological impact, just so that they can get you on board. And then once they have you on board, then the other stuff comes. think of a serial killer, right? Driving around in a white van. When he pulls over in his white van, he doesn't say, "Hey, jump into the van so that I can molest you and beat you over the head with a rock," right? I know this is a grim subject, but no, they want some innocuous kind of way to sort of lower your guard, get a little bit of commitment out of you, and then it goes further, right? Well, that is a good indicator that you're dealing with a psychopath. And so let's watch these videos.
As well. But it would not be my advice that we have any sort of vaccine passport within British Columbia for services in BC.
Okay, so that was Bonnie Henry. Now, let's take a look at Justin Trudeau. More of the same, I think you'll find.
On COVID, and then I'd like to pivot to the South, if I may. Will Canada consider requiring people in this country to have proof of vaccination similar to the digital passports that are being developed in places like Denmark and Greece and the EU?
I think it's an interesting idea, but I think it is also fraught with challenges. We are certainly encouraging and motivating people to get vaccinated as quickly as possible. But we always know there are people who won't get vaccinated, and not necessarily through a personal or political choice. There are medical reasons. There are a broad range of reasons why someone might not get vaccinated. And I'm worried about creating knock-on undesirable effects in our community. I think the indications that the vast majority of Canadians are looking to get vaccinated will get us to a good place without having to take more extreme measures that could have real divisive impacts on community and country.
Certainly, the federal government will be working with the provinces to ensure that there is an internationally accepted proof of vaccination that will allow Canadians to travel freely in the coming years. But in terms of domestic reflections on that, that's something that the provinces themselves will establish as what is right for them.
Get vaccinated. That's your choice. But don't think you can get on a plane or a train besides vaccinated people and put them at risk.
Yes, there is a small fringe element in this country that is angry, that doesn't believe in science, that is lashing out with racist, misogynistic attacks, and I know will not allow those voices, those special interest groups, those protesters I don't even want to call them protesters, those anti-vaxxer mobs.
So there you have it. Well, what can we say? We're dealing with liars, right? I mean, I think most of us were somewhat suspicious when all of this started. And, for good reason, right? And our suspicions have been proven correct. Now, just to keep something else in mind also. So when we're talking of the proof of vaccination, most of you will know, of course, that we have this thing that Bonnie Henry said she did not want and was not going to have because it created inequities. Okay, that was the first thing to lower our guard. Now that it actually has come in, the provincial health office is required, proof of full vaccination is required to access some events, services, and businesses in BC. The requirement is in place until January 31st, 2022, and could be extended. Could be extended. Yeah, okay, listen. I mean, if anybody thinks that this is gone on February 1st, 2022, I would like to sell you some oceanfront property in Nevada, okay? Because we all know that it won't be gone. It won't be gone. It's only going to continue. And so therefore, that takes us to what we can expect with regards to the COOF in 2022. You can expect to continue wearing masks at a lot of places, if not all places. And well, okay, I'll get into this somewhere else. You can expect more pressure on the boosters. You can expect a rolling series of loosening and then tightening, and then loosening and then tightening. Kind of a one step forward, two steps back, two steps forward, one step back. Something that keeps us in a perpetual loop, a perpetual cycle where you're never quite at the point of just completely disregarding everything, because there's always a little ray of hope, right? And you're never at the point of just saying everything is great and how it should be. It's a perpetual cycle that keeps going and going and going. Now, why? That's the big question. Why is this going to keep going and going and going? Well, because it benefits a lot of people, right? It's very useful as a mechanism of control. It's a very useful way to get information and to inadvertently spy on people. And it enriches a lot of people as well. So there's a lot of motives for keeping this going. And there's a lot of other people that are in on the decision. I don't think for a second it's just Bonnie Henry, because we see the same decisions all across the world, right? With some exceptions. And I'll get into the exceptions a little bit later on the social, cultural issues and what to expect in 2022. But yeah, suffice it to say, we're going to get more of the same. We're going to get modified versions of the lockdowns. They'll never be as strict as the very first one, unless there's something drastic that happens. But now here's what should be happening. So right now we have this, what is it, the Omicron. The Omicron variant is making its way right now. And the cases of this have surged to such a degree that really it's impossible to completely test everybody, completely isolate everybody, and administer these boosters or whatever. It's impossible to get a hold of on it because it's spreading so quickly, which I might add is what you would expect from a mutation. Mutations tend to progress in a way that makes them less deadly and more contagious, right? That's how variants work, because the variant is a virus and it's trying to survive itself. And the way it survives, if you kill somebody, as soon as it touches them, it doesn't last very long. So it needs to find a host and not kill them. So it's modifying itself as well. So really what should happen is this should really signal the end of extreme measures on the whole coof, right? Because essentially it's an endemic virus that we just have to live with now. We just have to live with it, because there's going to be people that are more vulnerable, old, grossly obese, comorbidities. They're going to be affected the most by it, even by the less virulent strains or variants. But the rest of us, I mean, it should be just time for us to move on, right? Basically, you get a cold, you get the sniffles, you get a headache, you get some body chills, whatever. And as that goes, that will probably even lessen over time as well, right? So that's what should happen. But it won't happen. It won't happen because, like I said, people have a vested interest in putting out other measures, and they're going to keep doing that as long as people stand for it, right? So in 2022, if you have any delusions that all of this is going to end, I think that's a big mistake, because I don't think it's going to end. I think we're going to be still in the cycle. And when I'm doing a video, if I'm still on YouTube next year, we will be recapping. We will be looking back at this, and sadly, I'm sure I will be right. So yeah, I mean, stuff with big money will find a way around it. Smaller events, schools, all that stuff are going to have just a degradation in what they're able to do, right? And like I said, rolling restrictions, loosening up a little bit, closing down a little bit. Certain things are going to be here to stay. These passports, here to stay. Mark my words, those aren't going anywhere. Masks on airplanes, here to stay. I mean, you only have to look back 20 years. I can remember when you didn't have to take off your shoes every time you went through a metal detector. But one weird whack job tried putting an explosive in his shoe, and for that reason, ever since, everybody has to take off their shoes. I don't know why. I mean, whatever. It is what it is. And the same thing with the liquids, right? The liquids has provided, a good revenue source for people on the other side of the security gate. So I guess they have no reason to get rid of that one either, right? So moving on. moving on. Wealth transfers. Okay. So another thing we can expect to see more of in the coming year is, although it may slow to a degree, I think we will see more of the wealth transfers that are going on, and we have seen massive wealth transfers. So that's one of the things that can help you understand why the things that are happening, right? Because there is very strong interests in making them happen and keeping them happening. That's why you have to stop these things dead in their tracks as soon as they start, because once people start getting in on the grift, it gets very, very, very hard to claw things back. And let's take a brief look at some of the wealth transfers we have seen this year. So, COVID killing off Canada's small businesses. So what's the date on this? December 24th. This is recent. Small businesses have taken a hit to the chin because of COVID lockdowns, with a loss of more than 740,000 jobs. Okay, 740,000 jobs, according to the Department of Industry. Now, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people that are working age, and I mean, small business, it can be one of a number of things, right? It can be, part-timers, it can be minimum wage, it can be a lot of things, but you also have to remember these are the owners themselves, the owners and the managers of these business, and those are kind of middle class jobs and lifestyles, right? The extent of the damages and losses will take time to be fully known, reported Blacklock's reporter. Private sector employment decreased in all provinces among small business. Employment decreased in all provinces, said a department report, and yet we're still bringing in 400,000+ people a year to migrate to Canada. We're bringing these people in, right? Even though we've lost 740,000 jobs. So basically, it goes through which places have been hardest hit. And here's something else to remember. A lot of these small businesses did receive loans, grants, wage subsidies, all those things. And all of those things really did where they were able to kind of soften the blow, right? Like, if you're going to kill somebody, screaming in and attacking them is one way to do it, but it creates a big fuss and a lot of noise and attracts a lot of attention. Another way is to silently suffocate them, put carbon monoxide maybe in the building or something like that, right? And they slowly fall asleep and die. And I mean, that's a similar kind of thing in that it papered over the issue a little bit. But one thing, it doesn't disguise the underlying problem. And these are the structural shifts, right? And the inequities that you're making, the money that they're losing is going to other players, and those other players are just getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and it makes it that much harder to compete. It changes people's shopping habits, people's consumption habits become permanently altered. So these little subsidies and these little grants and these loans, I mean, a loan you have to pay back anyways, but the rest of it, it's just kind of, it's a little sort of medicine, a little sweetener to help the medicine go down, essentially is what it is. A spoonful of sugar, right? So those are lasting problems, though. Let's look a little further into this. So here is a report that was in Global News, and this was from the beginning of the year. It said more than 200,000 small businesses could close permanently amid the pandemic. 200,000 small businesses could shut their doors permanently. And most small businesses are, like I say, they're people that are able to sustain a living from them, right? So if you have 5 hardware stores, that's 5 owners, probably 5 managers, and then some part-time workers. But those are 5 people that are probably 5 or more that are probably able to, sustain a family, a house, mortgage payments, property tax, all that stuff that goes with that kind of middle-class sort of lifestyle. All of that disappears and it's condensed into, say, a Home Depot where, there is no owner, but there's a few managers, right? And the few managers, they may not make quite as much as they would at that place. Maybe one or two of them make a bit more. And then it's just smaller employees after that. So you eliminate, you're not getting 5 families able to sustain themselves out of that, right? Whatever excess money is made is going off to shareholders and executive teams. So yeah, that was the bad news at the beginning of the year, and I mean that's obviously continued. And one other important thing to remember is that the government, they are running out of money that they can continue to paper over. So I mean, if there is now, most of the damage has been done, and most of these guys are zombies. A lot of these businesses are zombies. They're dead, but they're still animated. They're still moving. They're still technically in business. They're probably sustaining losses, or they're at break even for the time being, but it's not going to last much longer. And so those things are going to go down, right? So where is that money going? That money, well, let's take a look. So, and this is from August. This highlights some of where this wealth is being transferred. So Jeff Bezos has made an extra $75 billion. Now, does one man really need $75 billion more on top of the 113 billion he already had? And this is August, so he's probably up around 200 billion now. Elon Musk made another $150 billion over the course of the health crisis response, let's say. Not the health crisis itself, but it's the response that's driving this. Bill Gates, who famously said that when he dies, he wants to die with no money. He wants to give away all his money. Well, he's not doing a very good job, is he? He started off with $98 billion, and somehow he's accumulated another $32 billion. Like, Bill Gates may be good at some things, but he's really, really shitty at giving away his money. Mark Zuckerberg, 74 billion, and you can see the list as we go on. Larry Page, Larry Ellison, Sergey Brin, Steve Ballmer, Jim Walton. You know, these are the companies that have done well. Microsoft has done well. Walmart has done well. Amazon's created billions, not just for Bezos, but for Scott McKinsey too. I've never even heard of him. But just in aggregate, these 20 individuals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 people in aggregate have pulled in nearly $700 billion. And remember, like I said, the $700 billion isn't some magical number, some digits. This is $700 billion that would have normally been displaced out into the economy on people that support, you know, football teams, hockey teams, soccer teams, paying property taxes. You know, I mean, these would be hundreds and hundreds and thousands of individuals out there with a middle class lifestyle. And, you know, Jeff Bezos is not going to go support thousands of community soccer teams, and he's not paying property tax on thousands of locations, and he's not visiting markets in thousands of places, buying cars. He's not doing all that stuff, right? Well, cars actually he is buying, but so there you go. I mean, that's a very unfortunate thing that's happened. Very predictable. It was predictable early on, and nothing has been done really to remedy or address the situation. More of the same, really. And unfortunately, I think we can see more of this to continue in 2022. All we ever really see to counter it is, hey, shop local. But I mean, even if you do want to shop local, first of all, they're really struggling to get products now. You have to show them a vaccine passport. You have to get your papers out, right? You have to strap on a mask. I mean, the experience itself has become so unpleasant now that, you know, the trend is only going to continue, and it's going to accelerate, if anything. And, you know, it's probably at a point now where it's probably impossible to reverse. Well, I would say it is impossible to reverse. You can always get new entrepreneurs into a market, but there's what you would call a lot of cholesterol sort of clogging up the system now with these businesses that are more or less on life support. And many more of those will go down the drain. Some not so small, some even bigger. So let's move on from that. One other thing, actually. Another prediction for 2022 is around social and cultural issues. Now, one right at the very start of the pandemic or the health crisis, I really got to be careful with these algorithms. One of the things we saw at the start was an almost entirely uniform approach to what every country and jurisdiction was doing, right? You know, they started off, I guess China sort of set the tone with their histrionics and their theater and all these videos that were coming out of China. And I think that was more or less just to prime people psychologically for taking the same sort of action, right? But people just sort of fell in line with lockdown. I really hate the term lockdown because, I mean, that's a prison term, right? Lockdown, you know, that's how you punish bad prisoners. You do a lockdown. You don't give them their privileges. You know, they can't go out to the yard or the commissary or whatever because they're in lockdown, right? And I mean, the fact that we've so readily just kind of adopted that term that in itself is a bit shocking. But getting back to what I was saying, in the early days, we saw kind of a uniform approach. You know, almost every place went into a lockdown. But over time, we're seeing some variances, right? Some have become much more authoritarian and dictatorial. Australia is a good example. Canada is another good example. Some have become much more, you know, open and moved in the other direction. And, you know, there's some states, Florida is a state, Texas is another state that have kind of gone in that direction. And I think we're going to continue to see some sort of divergence. And what that's going to do is that is going to create a split in culture and economies. For instance, I was just in Texas not long ago. And honestly, for me, it was really fantastic. It was like going back to 2019. You know, you walk into a restaurant and people want to offer you a seat rather than see your health status. You walk into a building, you don't have to have a muzzle on your face. And I was telling people about this back in Canada, and they were so concerned. The Texans don't care about their people, and you know, they're crazy down there. Oh, they're all going to die. Yeah, no, that's not happening. They're all pretty healthy and pretty fit and doing just fine, right? So I think places like that, I mean, as it currently stands, okay, so you will get about 10% of the population in these more draconian jurisdictions. You'll get 10% of the population that are not going along with it, no matter what. No incentive. You bar them from grocery stores, bar them from travel, everything else. They're not going along with that, right? And you get probably, I don't know, 15 or 20% of the people that watch the evening news. They just swallow the propaganda wholesale. Whatever you say to do, they are going to do it. They'll do it enthusiastically, and they'll rally and berate others that are not also doing it, right? But there's a large swath in the middle. And the large swath in the middle essentially just want to get through their day with the least amount of friction. They want to make their money. They want to enjoy their interests and avoid any kind of hassle, right? You know, and I mean, sadly, if that group of people was a little more, you know, a little braver, let's say, we could stop a lot of this stuff dead in their tracks. But that group of people, we're going to start shedding from their compliance, and they're going to do what people often do, and they shop around, right? They vote, or they determine things by their choices they make in their lifestyle. So I think we are going to see a massive influx of people moving from harsh jurisdictions like Australia, if they can even get out of Australia, and like Canada, if you can get out of Canada, into places like Florida, Texas, I don't know, maybe Idaho, Wyoming. There are certain states, particularly within the US, that are really kind of free and open. And they're going to see a lot of people moving from other states there and moving from other countries there as well. And, you know, and I think sadly, I think it's going to be very, it's going to be a great replacement of sorts. You're going to be replacing all these sort of more entrepreneurial people, more ambitious, motivated people that have had their lifestyles really impinged, and they're going to move to those jurisdictions. And countries like Canada and Australia are going to fill in that population by just third world people that want to immigrate to those countries. That's what's going to happen. So you're going to see one group of people coming in to replace another group of people that are going off into these more entrepreneurial directions. And the places they go will probably really benefit from this influx of people. So that is going to be a big change that I think is really, it's probably happened already to some degree. But, you know, when we go from 2 weeks to flatten the curve to 2 years to flatten the world, I think at that point, people say, okay, this is not a temporary thing. This is a permanent thing, and I'm going to come up with a permanent solution for it, right? So yeah, that's going to be a big, big trend, is flight to these different, to freedom zones in 2022. Okay, finally, geopolitical. I know a lot of people, I will lose a lot of people, so this is why I saved this for the end. But the geopolitical situation, 2021 is probably the most unique year for geopolitics since I've been an adult. The last time would have been probably the collapse of the Soviet Union. But in 2021, what we saw, which has sort of gone under the radar, is an alliance formed between China and Russia. And this is a reliance or an alliance of sorts, kind of a loose alliance, but a cooperative partnership that was created through ignorance and idiocy and incompetence in the West. I mean, the Western countries have been so chauvinistic and so obnoxious and so belligerent to China, but especially to Russia. Now, we often forget that right after the Cold War, see, I was around, I was an adult right when the Cold War ended. And I was into this stuff back then too. But I think the idea with Russians at the time was, hey, this communism shit is over. We want to be friends with you guys. We don't want to argue. We want to be friends. We want the same things you want. We're on board too. Hey, that's it. It's over, right? And the West, led by the US, of course, and NATO, said, yeah, great. But you know what? We're gonna start taking advantage of your weakness and moving into all these places. So all these places that were formerly aligned with the Soviet Union, like Poland and the Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, the Baltic states, all those places, the NATO started moving in bases, and they just said, look, we're not going to take this as friendship. We're just going to move closer and back you up even more. And that was really a bad message. And I mean, that's been going on for a while, and the Russia has not been in a position of strength to really counteract it. And so, of course, we got, the same neocons, and it doesn't matter if it's George Bush or Obama or, Trump to a degree maybe, but we get the same destructive forces moving into all these countries. We've seen revolutions, Syria. I mean, look at the fallout from that. Libya, that was another one. Those two were both under Obama. Iraq and Afghanistan, of course, under George Bush. We've seen how those have been turning out. And also under Obama, we had the situation in Ukraine. And Ukraine, I mean, they attempted another one of their color revolutions. They recently just attempted one in Belarus, but these color revolutions are starting to fail now. They failed in Syria. But it's creating a lot of instability. And the fact that they continue to try these things to put in regimes that are, I don't know, designed to enrich American oligarchs or whoever, it's very destructive and it's very destabilizing. And that's essentially what happened with Ukraine. And now Russia has taken the last 8 years and has gotten much, much stronger militarily. They started remaking their military want to say about 15 years ago, at around the time of the Georgian War. And they've been very effective at doing it. They've put a great focus on tech, and the Russian military, to be frank, is if there's a clash, a traditional clash between NATO and Russia in Europe, Russia is going to win that. They're much better prepared. They're much more responsive. Their technology is there, and they have a much stronger desire and an esprit de corps, I think you would call it. And they know that now. And so, I mean, for 4 years, Donald Trump, to his credit, tried to build a bridge with Putin, bring Russia on side, and the neocons, the deep state, whoever you want to call them, the media, all of these, the cathedral, they all relentlessly demonized Putin and Russia. And so now you get the result, right? So Russia has said, look, I'm not gonna, I don't give a shit about being friends with the West anymore. We've tried for 20 years, 30 years. It hasn't worked. China, what are you doing? And China said, hey, I think we can do business. And that's exactly what's happened, right? So they have, and another thing is these constant pushing of sanctions, economic sanctions. They've now made Russia completely resilient to any sanctions. The US can't sanction Russia now because Russia's economy is self-sufficient now. And so China and Russia have formed an alliance. Russia has got red lines in Europe in particular. China has red lines with regards to Taiwan. Together, they form a massive bloc in terms of military, in terms of economy, in terms of natural resources, a bloc that, you know, is much more significant, and it's overpowers the US and the US bloc and NATO in some senses. I mean, it's not, it's kind of an asymmetrical look, right? And this alliance, they're picking up interested parties in the Middle East now, probably Africa as well, and other parts of the world, Central Asia, and it's growing in strength. And 2021 is the year that this sort of alliance kind of congealed and came together. I think with the Biden administration, I think that was the last straw for Putin, and he went to China, and they've worked out some sort of agreement and partnership, and they are gaining in strength rapidly. And the US, of course, is losing strength rapidly. The West in general is in a period of rapid decline. So 2021 is going to be a pivotal year. And I really, really hope that there's not going to be a conflict in Europe, but we're getting very close. We're getting as close to a major conflict in Europe as I've seen in my adult life, or I guess my life, since maybe the wars in the Yugoslavia. But I mean, that was different. That was always a war that more or less could be contained because Russia was not a player back then. And, you know, the US and NATO could contain that war fairly easy. So probably the most significant time since, I guess, at least World War II, in terms of looking at a European-wide devastating conflict. And we're getting close to that now. So, I mean, that's a situation that we should all watch for, but I think we can expect to see a reversal of the trend of the US demanding more, and Russia will now start to establish red lines, positions, demands, things like that in Europe. And we're going to see other states maybe come into play, Serbia, maybe Montenegro, and some of these other places in the Balkans, more marginal type states that may potentially leave the EU or NATO and join the sort of Russia-China alliance. That's potentially, I mean, that may not happen in 2022, although it could, right? Things move fast these days. So geopolitically, that's what we're looking at. So that is what to expect in 2022. Remember, you come to the Rockwell Report, you hear it all. You hear health information, training information, geopolitics, social issues, cultural issues, everything. I got it all. So until next time, until 2022, I will see you later. Stay strong, my friends. Stay strong.